Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello, good morning everyone. How are you today? Hopefully you are healthy, right? Okay, for this meeting we will discussion about the influence of Islamic reform in Indonesia. So, stay tuned and keep attention, okay? In this chapter, I will explain about the influence of the Islamic renewal movement in Indonesia. So, the Islamic reform movement in Indonesia began to flourish in the early 20th century under Ottoman. The influence of the Islamic movement that had been taking place in the Middle East was slowly exerting its influence in Indonesia. The idea of pan-Islamism, initiated by Sayyid Jamaluddin al-Afghani, is well understood by the leaders of the reform movement in Indonesia. Nah, this movement had a broad impact on the emergence of the nationalism movement in Indonesia, so that the Indonesian people were moved to rise and unite to strengthen Ukhuwah al-Islamiyah. Various reform efforts were taken by Indonesian scholars. The emergence of Islamic religious social organization has grown the seeds of nationalism in the modern sense. Organizational figures are also aware of the importance of educational institutions to support the nation's young generation. The Indonesian people began to develop strategies to rise up against the invaders. Muslims must play an active role in the struggle for Indonesian independence. After the Islamic reformers succeeded in updating the education system at Al-Azhar University, the age of Al-Azhar continues to age throughout the world. The influence of reform in the field of education in Indonesia has been successfully awakened so that the perception of the Indonesian nation in move more forward. Slowly and surely, the education system in Indonesia is changing and enlightening. Education is not only focused on religious learning, but also learning in the field of general science. Okay, for the next chapter, we will discuss about the Islamic renewal movement in Indonesia. At the beginning of the 20th century, the thought of reform had colored the currents of the Islamic movement in Indonesia. However, looking at the development of reforms in Indonesia are not only influenced by reform from abroad. Reform in Indonesia was pioneered by figures from religious and social organizations, including Kiai Haji Ahmad Dahlan in Muhammadiyah, Hadratus Syekh Hashim Ash'ari in Nahdlatul Ulama, Haji Ahmad Surkati in Al-Irsyad, Zamzam in Persatuan Islam Indonesia. The scholars studied a lot of religious knowledge in Indonesia and studied in Mecca. Among other figures is Cokro Aminoto in Syarikat Islam, who is known through inspiration from Islamic reform ideas from the Indian subcontinent. There are several ways for new ideas from outside to enter Indonesia, including 1. The pilgrimage and mukim routes, 2. Publication routes, and 3. Role of the student. The first is pilgrimage and mukim routes, namely tradition of Indonesian Muslim leaders who perform the pilgrimage at the time to temporarily reside in order to gain and deepen religious knowledge or other knowledge, so that when they return to their homeland, the quality of their knowledge and practice of religion generally increase. The new ideas they get often also affect the orientation of their talk and da'wah in the country. The return of scholars who have studied in Mecca is very strong influence in Indonesian society, so that the Islamic reform movement brought by the scholars who returned from Mecca developed rapidly. Number 2 is publication channels, namely in the form of journals or magazines that contain Islamic reform ideas from both Egypt and Beirut publications. the discourse voiced by the media that attracted Indonesian Muslims to translate it into Indonesian and even local language, such as the journal Al-Imam, Neraca, and Tunas Melayu in Singapore, Al-Munir Aus published in West Utara. And for the last way is the role of student who had studied in the Middle East. The leader of the early Islamic reform movement in Indonesia were almost evenly graduated from Middle Eastern education. The role of Middle East alumni students is still ongoing. It can be said that alumni from the Middle East still have a special place in society, especially academics. In general, the emergence of Islamic reform in Indonesia is a form of response to the condition of the Indonesian nation, which is undergoing a political, cultural, and intellectual invasion from the Western world. In such situations and conditions, national awareness emerges as a child of a nation that was colonized by foreigner rulers and seems to trigger togetherness to place national priorities as a form of concern. Thus, the development of the Islamic reform movement in Indonesia in the midst of society in general at the beginning of the 20th century. The pattern of Islamic religious movements in Indonesia can be divided into several groups as follows. The first is traditionalist conservatives, namely those who reject the tendency of westernization in the name of Islam, which in understanding and practice preserves local style tradition. The supporters of this group are mostly ulama, tarekat, and rural residents. And number two is reformers, modernists, namely they affirm the relevance of Islam for all fields of life, both private and public. Islam is seen as having the character of flexibility in interacting with the times. And for the third pattern of Islamic religious movements in Indonesia is radical Puritan, while agreeing with Islam's claim of flexibility in the midst of the times, are reluctant to use the modernist tendencies in exploiting Western ideas. They believe more in the interpretation which he calls purely Islamic. This group also criticized thinking and ways implementation of the traditionalists. As an enrichment, it is interesting to compare this typology with the case of the Islamic movement that developed in Turkey. And for the last chapter is about the Islamic organizations in Indonesia. Islamic organizations in Indonesia are Islamic organizations in Indonesia that are engaged in religious, educational, social, and economic fields. The existence of Islamic organizations in Indonesia cannot be separated from their role during the struggle for independence. The role of Islamic scholars who are members of various organizations in the struggle for independence is very large and cannot be ignored. The following are Islamic organizations that were formed in the pre-independence period. Number one is Jamiatul Khair, that is founded on 17th of July 1905 in Jakarta. This organization initially worked in the field of basic education and sent students to Turkey and is the only modern educational organization in Indonesia. The teachers were brought in from Tunisia, Sudan, Morocco, Egypt, and Arabia. Their correspondence with movement figures as well as foreign newspapers helped spread the word about the atrocities of the Dutch government. A well-known teacher from here is Sheikh Ahmad Surkati from Sudan, who emphasized that there is no difference between fellow Muslims of equal status. Most of the Indonesian ulama figures were born from this organization, such as Kiai Haji Ahmad Dahlan, Cokro Aminoto, Haji Samanhudi, and Haji Agus Salim. Number 2 is Syarikat Islam Indonesia, or we can call SI Indonesia. Is the oldest mass organization established since the colonial era, founded by Haji Samanhudi on 16th of October 1905. The beginning of the establishment of SI Indonesia named Syarikat Dagang Islam, or SDI, an organization established as a forum for associations and movements in order to compete with indigenous Muslim traders. In order to compete with the monopoly of Chinese traders at that time, the Dutch East Indies colonial government's imperialistic attitude towards indigenous traders made Haji Samanhudi. Haji Samanhudi, who also worked as a merchant, moved quickly to spread the news of the establishment of Syarikat Dagang Islam, one of which was through the Taman Pewarta Bulletin in 1902 until 1915. The first Syarikat Islam Congress in Surabaya on November 10, 1912. However, a year before the Syarikat Dagang Islam changed its name to Syarikat Islam, the name change also changed the space for the Syarikat Islam movement in a broad sense, covering various social, political, economic, educational, and religious aspects. The change of name within the Syarikat Islam was discussed at the first Syarikat Islam Congress in Surabaya on 20 January 1913. Number 3 is Persatuan Umat Islam, was founded by Kiai Haji Abdul Halim, who was a nurturing cleric at the Majalengka Islamic Boarding School, West Java in 1911. Persatuan Umat Islam is a combination of two Islamic organizations in West Java, namely the Persyarikatan Ummah Islam and the Al-Attihad Al-Islamiyah organization led by Kiai Haji Ahmad Sanusi in Sukabumi. Persatuan Umat Islam later established many schools and Islamic boarding schools in West Java. Number 4 is the Muhammadiyah organization. It was founded by Kiai Haji Ahmad Dahlan in Kauman Village, Yogyakarta on 8 Dzulhijjah 13 and 30 Hijriah, or 18 November 1912. The birth of existence of Muhammadiyah at its inception cannot be separated and is a manifestation of the ideas and deeds of the struggle of Kiai Haji Ahmad Dahlan, or we can call Muhammad Darwis, who became its founder after performing the pilgrimage to the Holy Land and settling for the second time in 1903. Kiai Haji Ahmad Dahlan began to sow the seeds of reform in the country. The idea for reform was obtained by Kiai Haji Ahmad Dahlan after studying with Indonesian clerics. With his intellectual capital and interaction while living in Saudi Arabia and reading the works of the reformers of Islamic thought, Kiai Haji Ahmad Dahlan has planted the seeds of renewal ideas. So, upon his return from Saudi Arabia, Kiai Haji Ahmad Dahlan actually brought the idea and movement of reform instead of being conservative. Number 5 is the Al-Irsyad Al-Islamiyah Association, or we can call Jamiat Al-Islah wal Al-Irsyad Al-Islamiyah, was established on 15 Shawwal 13 and 32 Hijriah, or 6 September 1914. This date refers to the establishment of the first Madrasah Al-Irsyad Al-Islamiyah in Jakarta. The legal recognition itself was only issued by the Dutch colonial government on 11 August 1915. The central figure in the establishment of Al-Irshad was Al-Alamah Sheikh Ahmad Surkati Al-Ansari, a great Meccan cleric who came from Sudan. At first, Sheikh Surkati came to Indonesia at the request of the Jamiat Khair Association, the majority of which consisted of Indonesians of Arab descent from the Sayyid group, and was founded in 1905. Al-Irshad in the early days of its birth was known as a group of Islamic reformers in Indonesia, along with Muhammadiyah and Persatuan Islam, or we can call Persis. The three main figures of this association there are Ahmad Surkati, Ahmad Dahlan, and Ahmad Hasan, often referred to as the trio of Indonesian Islamic reformers. Since its inception, Al-Irshad Al-Islamiyah aims to purify monotheism, worship and practice of Islam, engaged in education and da'wah. To realize this goal, Al-Irshad has established hundreds of formal schools and non-formal educational institutions spread throughout Indonesia. Number 6 is Persatuan Islam, or Persis. It's an Islamic organization in Indonesia. Persis was founded on 12 September 1923 in Bandung by a group of Muslims interested in education and religious activities led by Haji Zamzam and Haji Muhammad Yunus. Persis was founded with the aim of providing an understanding of Islam that is in accordance with the original proof by the Prophet Muhammad SAW, and provides a different view from the traditional understanding of Islam, which is considered unoriginal because it is mixed with local culture, plain taklid attitude, uncritical attitude, and does not want to explore Islam further in by opening the books of hadith that are authentic. Therefore, through his scholars such as Ahmad Hasan, who is also known as Hasan Bandung or Hasan Banyil, Persatuan Islam introduced Islam, which only came from the Quran and Hadith, or words of the Prophet. Exactly, not a politically oriented religious organization, but more focused on Islamic education and da'wah, and trying to uphold the teachings of Islam as a whole without being interfered with superstition, shirk, and bid'ah, which have spread widely among the general Muslim community. Number 2 is Nahdlatul Ulama, or we can call NU, is the largest Islamic organization in Indonesia and the world. This organization was founded on 19 Rajab 13 and 44 Hijriah and is engaged in religious, educational, social, and economic field. The presence of NU is one of the efforts to institutionalize the insight of religious traditions that were embraced long before, namely the understanding of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jamaah. Historically, NU has emerged as a moderate Islamic organization in Indonesia and is able to accept local tradition and adapt to changing times. At NU, it is widely known maqalah al-muhafadhah ala al-qadimiyal solih wal akhdu bil jadid al-aslah, or maintaining old things that are still good and taking new things that are better. And the last Islam organization is Majelis Islam A'la Indonesia, or MEII was a forum for Islamic organizations in Indonesia in the pre-independence era. MEII was founded on Tuesday, Wake, 15 Rajab 13 and 59 or September on the initiative of Kiai Haji Hashim Ash'ari. Among the Islamic organizations that are members of MEII are Muhammadiyah, Nahdlatul Ulama, Al-Irsyad, the Indonesian Arab Party, the Indonesian Islamic Syarikat Party or PSII, Al-Khairiyah, the Indonesian Ulama Association or Persatuan Umat Islam, Al-Hidayatul Islamiyah, the Islamic Union, exactly, the Indonesian Islamic Party or PII, Jong Islamiyah Tenpon Al-Ittihadiyatul Islamiyah, and the Al-Aceh Ulama Association or PUSA. At first, MEII was only a coordinator or mediator for various activities. Then it was developed as a forum to unite Muslims in the country to face Dutch politics that divided the ulama and Islamic parties. In the period 1939 until 1945, the ulama joined together in one assembly, and MEII was disbanded because the colonial power at that time considered MEII to be irrelevant to the colonial policy. Therefore, a new policy was made that could accommodate the colonial policy towards Muslims. To realize this, it was replaced with the Indonesian Muslim Shura Council, or we called Masyumi, as a new organization that became one of the place for the aspirations of Muslims. Okay guys, thank you so much for your attention, and I think that is enough for me, and I will share quiz for our review this material. And wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. See you.